For an entire generation, being a good adult meant following rules that nobody explained, and that almost nobody dares to question out loud. Today, younger people are not just questioning those rules, they're actively walking away from many of them. And this is where it gets interesting, because what looked like respect or stability to boomers can feel like self-betrayal or limiting your life to their kids and grandkids. Growing up, my grandmother raised 4 children on a modest teacher's salary in a suburb of Sacramento. She never complained, never reached out for support, and never paused to ask whether the life she was living actually fit who she was. That was simply the script: you work hard, keep your head down, and you don't ask if there might be another way. Last Thanksgiving, she gently asked me why I don't want children. There was no accusation in her voice, just real confusion. In her world, choosing not to have kids wasn't a decision, it was unthinkable. That short conversation hit me like a spotlight and made something very clear. So much of her life was shaped by invisible expectations, rules she absorbed without anyone ever needing to say them out loud. Those rules once felt absolute, almost like laws of nature. Now, younger generations treat many of them as optional, or even outdated. And this is the part most people miss: it's not just rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's a response to a completely different reality. Here are 8 of those once sacred rules that are quietly being broken. 1. Spend your whole career at one job. For many boomers, the right thing to do was to land a decent job, show up every day, and stay put for decades. You proved your worth through loyalty, you didn't bounce around, you didn't test the market, and you definitely didn't leave a good job just because you were curious about something else. Job hopping was labeled flaky, unreliable, even irresponsible. The unwritten deal seemed fair at the time: give your employer loyalty and long-term commitment, and in return, they'll offer security, steady pay, and a pension at the end of the road. But here's where it gets controversial: that deal started falling apart a long time ago. Companies downsized, offshored, automated, and restructured. People who had given 20 or 30 years to a company were suddenly laid off with little warning, and far less financial safety than they'd been promised. Younger generations watched this unfold. They saw parents and relatives burned by layoffs, pensions disappear, and decades of loyalty repaid with frozen wages or abrupt terminations. So they changed their strategy. Instead of treating one company as a lifelong home, they treat their careers as portfolios, moving every few years to access better pay, growth, flexibility, or alignment with their values. Now, staying in one role for too long can actually raise questions: are you still learning? Are you being paid what you're worth? Are you stuck out of fear? Many Millennials and Gen Z workers change jobs every 2 to 3 years, not because they don't care, but because that's often how promotions, raises, and meaningful opportunities actually happen. So that never leave a stable job rule was built on an economic system that has largely vanished. Boomers were trained to protect stability. Younger workers are trained to protect themselves. 2. Keep quiet about mental health and just cope. In many boomer households, mental health wasn't a topic, it was a taboo. Therapy was reserved for people with serious issues. Feelings like depression, anxiety, or burnout might have existed, but they stayed underground. You were expected to deal with your struggles privately, put on a brave face, and avoid burdening other people with your emotional reality. This approach wasn't always rooted in cruelty, often it was about survival, stigma, and a belief that emotional restraint was a sign of strength. Admitting you were struggling could be seen as weakness, drama, or even moral failure. But over time, research and lived experience revealed a hard truth: bottling everything up doesn't heal anything. It can worsen mental health, strain relationships, and even affect physical well-being. Younger generations are taking almost the opposite approach. They talk about therapy as a normal health tool, like going to a dentist or a physical therapist. They openly discuss anxiety, depression, ADHD, burnout, and more, both in private conversations and publicly, including on social media. They explore medication, mindfulness, coaching, and support groups without feeling that it makes them broken. Older generations sometimes interpret this openness as oversharing, self-pity, or an obsession with labels. Younger people see it as essential honesty, and a way to dismantle the shame that kept so many of their parents and grandparents suffering in silence. Here's a question that splits opinions: is all this openness healthy, or has it gone too far into making illness part of identity? 3. Obey authority without challenging it. Boomers were largely taught that certain people deserved automatic respect: teachers, doctors, bosses, religious leaders, police officers, parents, essentially anyone in an official position. You might disagree privately, but you rarely questioned them out loud. Pushing back could be seen as rude, ungrateful, or rebellious. The assumption behind this was simple: if someone held authority, they must have earned it and probably knew more than you. So you accepted the doctor's advice, followed your boss's directions, complied with your parents' rules, and hoped it would pay off. Younger generations grew up with a constant stream of information and scandals at their fingertips. They saw examples of leaders abusing power, companies lying to consumers, systems discriminating against certain groups, and experts contradicting each other. The internet made it easy to compare opinions, do independent research, and see that authority does not automatically mean trustworthy or correct. As a result, many younger people are more comfortable asking for second opinions, questioning policies, challenging unfair workplace practices, or saying why, instead of blindly following orders. To some boomers, this looks like disrespect or entitlement. To many younger adults, it feels like healthy skepticism in a world where blind trust can be dangerous. So here's the uncomfortable twist: is unquestioned respect truly virtuous, or can it sometimes enable harmful systems to keep running unchecked? 4. Marry young, have kids, and follow the timeline. For a lot of boomers, life followed a predictable script: finish school, find a job, get married in your early to mid-20s, and have children soon after. Waiting too long or doing things out of order often triggered gossip or concern. Being single past 30 was suspicious. Not wanting children at all could be framed as selfish, immature, or just a phase. Living together before marriage was controversial in many communities. My own parents married at 23, which fit that cultural norm perfectly. By contrast, I'm 44, have lived with my partner for 5 years, and we have no plans to marry or have children. For their generation, this might have seemed almost unimaginable. For mine, it hardly turns heads. Today, many people marry later, if at all. Some choose long-term partnerships without legal marriage. Others prioritize careers, travel, personal growth, or financial stability before committing, or instead of committing, to parenting. Birth rates have dropped in many countries, and child-free by choice is becoming a recognized, valid path rather than a shameful secret. Younger generations tend to frame milestones like marriage and parenting as options, not obligations. There is growing recognition that one rigid timeline doesn't fit everyone's personality, mental health, finances, or life goals. This shift can feel heartbreaking or confusing to boomers who deeply value family and tradition. But from the younger perspective, forcing people into roles they don't truly want is more harmful than accepting diverse life paths. A provocative question here: is choosing not to have kids an act of selfishness, or an honest, responsible decision in a world facing economic strain and climate anxiety? 5. Keep family issues behind closed doors. Don't air dirty laundry was a core principle in many boomer households. Whatever happened within the family, marital conflict, addiction, abuse, financial chaos, mental illness, was supposed to stay there. You didn't discuss it with neighbors, teachers, or therapists. The family's image mattered, sometimes more than any individual's comfort or safety. On the surface, this rule protected privacy and dignity. But it also meant that many people endured painful situations without outside help, because speaking up felt like betrayal. Problems that could have been eased with support or intervention were allowed to fester in the dark. Younger generations are more likely to name and discuss family dysfunction. They might talk about difficult upbringings, cut contact with abusive or manipulative relatives, or set firm boundaries that would have been unthinkable decades ago. Social media amplifies these stories, but the deeper shift is about priorities. Personal well-being and emotional safety are being placed above maintaining a flawless family image. To some boomers, this open criticism of parents or relatives looks disloyal and disrespectful.